Hello, and welcome to my channel, Reading Little Blue Books Out Loud. Oops, get my marker out of there. This is a little blue book. And it just happens to be Little Blue Book number 409, entitled Great Men of Science, written by Hereward, H-E-R-E-W-A-R-D, Hereward Carrington Ph.D. And it is copyrighted 1924. This is part 5. And we left off at the bottom of page 50, and we begin a new chapter on page 51 entitled Psychologists. The science of psychology is so new, relatively speaking, that it cannot be said to have much history. Many of the older writers wrote upon the subject at some length, but so little was known concerning the mind that their writings necessarily have only historical value. The most important of these is undoubtedly Aristotle's Psychology. Locke's essay on the human understanding was an epoch-making book, and greatly influenced many of the philosophers such as Kant, Hume, Bishop, Berkeley, and others dealt with psychology from the philosophical point of view. Wundt, W-U-N-D-T, Wundt, was one of the first experimental psychologists and founded the first psychological laboratory. His works are important, being filled with observations and valuable data. Stout, C.S., Myers, Munsterberg, Ladd, Tichenor, Dewey, Dr. Morton, Prince, Boris Sidis, Jastow, Thorndike are important contemporary names. Herbert Spencer's Psychology was an important pioneer work, helping to ensure a place for the study with the other exact sciences. G. H. Lewes' 5 volumes of Problems of Life and Mind were also important contributions in their day. Dr. Hack Tuke was one of the first writers to call attention to the influence of the mind upon the body. In his book bearing that title, Hartmann's Philosophy of the Unconscious, in 3 volumes, was an important work, though now only of historical value. Dr. Maudsley published several important works such as The Pathology of Mind, Body and Mind, Responsibility in Mental Disease, etc. Dr. Charles Mercer's writings upon insanity are well known, popular, but at the same time important. The man who did more to popularize psychology, however, than any other, and who also helped to install it in the ranks of exact science, was undoubtedly Professor William James. His influence was far-reaching and profound, and his clear, lucid style of writing enabled him to make the most abstruse subjects intelligible and interesting. His Principles of Psychology in 2 volumes is one of the great classics. In his later years, James devoted himself largely to philosophy and founded the doctrine of pragmatism. He will always be identified with psychology, however, and he was unquestionably one of the greatest minds which America has so far produced. Sigmund Freud of Vienna is the founder of the school of Psychoanalysis, which now has such an extensive following. His most important books in English are The Interpretation of Dreams, The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, On Dreams, etc. Closely associated with Freud's name is that of Dr. Carl Jung of Zurich, who represents a branch of the psychoanalytic school. His work on the psychology of the unconscious is an important book. Pierre Janet of Paris is noted chiefly for his studies of hysteria. T.H. Ribbett is an outstanding figure in the history of psychology. His works on the diseases of the will, of the personality, of the memory, etc., are very well known. His work on heredity is also important. Alfred Binet of the Sorbonne has contributed a number of important works embodying valuable researches. He is the originator of the famous Binet tests, which came into such prominence during the World War. And that would be World War I to us. William Mcdougall is one of the most influential figures in the field of psychology today. His Social Psychology is an epoch-making book, while his other works are all of extreme originality and value. Gustave Le Bon of Paris is known for his original researches on the psychology of the crowd, but he is also known for his researches in the field of physics, as his books The Evolution of Matter and The Evolution of Forces amply testify. F. W. H. Myers is noted for his original work on the subconscious mind, or as he preferred to call it, the subliminal consciousness. While primarily a physical researcher, Myers was also a daring and original psychologist. His great book on human personality is classic. Weber and Fechner are names connected with important developments in psychology. Braid was the founder of hypnotism, supplementing the older school of mesmerism, founded by Anton Mesmer. William B. Carpenter's Mental Physiology was an important work in its day. The work of Alexander Bain should also be noted. Professor Henry Morselli of Genoa, Italy, has contributed a number of valuable papers to medical psychology and published a standard book upon suicide. For some years, he became greatly interested in cynical research and published 2 enormous volumes entitled Psychology and Spiritism in Italian. His name is famous throughout Europe. Next chapter, Physicians. It is a difficult matter to distinguish great physicians from great anatomists, physiologists, etc., such as Galen, Harvey, and others, sketches of whose lives and works may be found in the section devoted to biology. Thus, Harvey was a great anatomist. He was also a physician, and the same is true for many others. In the present section, therefore, I shall attempt to give merely a brief list of some important names which are distinguished primarily for their accomplishments in purely medical fields. Lord Lister, born in 1827, is a name which will always be associated with practical benefit to humanity. He first introduced antiseptic methods into surgery, and was thus the means of saving many hundreds of thousands of lives, not only in his own generation, but for all time to come. Robert Koch, born 1843, discovered in 1881 the germ of tuberculosis, and in 1883 the germ of Asiatic cholera. Since that time, his name has been connected with a number of remarkable discoveries of practical application in the science of medicine. Charcot of the Salpêtrière Hospital, Paris, contributed many important papers on the nervous system and its diseases. Dr. Carroll of the Rockefeller Institute, New York, has done much important research work upon immunity and the possibility of maintaining life in tissues removed from the body, transplanting organs, etc. The Mayo brothers of Minnesota are justly famous for their marvelous operations. Ulrich is noted for his bacteriological investigations as applied to medicine. Finson for the first to apply ultraviolet light rays of certain wavelengths for the cure of lupus, so prevalent a disease in northern countries. Criley is noted for his work upon shock. Kneipp was the founder of the celebrated water cure method. Graham was an early diet reformer, after whom our Graham bread is named. R.T. Trall, T-R-A-L-L, was an early health reformer in this country, whose work is now largely forgotten, but is important nevertheless. Dr. E. H. Dewey originated the now famous fasting cure for disease. The introduction of anesthetics was one of the greatest blessings which the last century bestowed upon mankind. In 1800, Sir Humphrey Davy had noted the anesthetic properties of laughing gas. In 1818, Faraday discovered that the vapor of sulfuric ether produced the same results. In 1847, Dr. James Young Simpson of Edinburgh had discovered that chloroform acted as an effective anesthetic, rendering major operations possible without pain to the patient. In the previous year, however, Dr. Morton of Boston had discovered the anesthetic properties of ether and performed several successful operations by its aid. These two substances have saved humanity countless hours of pain. Edward Jenner, born in 1749, was the discoverer of vaccination as a preventative for smallpox. There are many who doubt the value of this discovery, however. Pasteur, while a chemist and not a physician, did valuable work in bacteriology and prevention of certain diseases in both animal and man. Sir Ronald Ross first discovered the cause and cure of malaria fever, while Sir David Bruce discovered the parasite responsible for sleeping sickness. The germ causing the plague, the Black Death of the Middle Ages, was discovered by Professor Kitsato, a Japanese, in 1834. That was 1894. Sometimes it's hard to read the print. Behring and Rowe in 1894 discovered the antitoxin serum for diphtheria. The microbe responsible for this disease had been discovered in 1883 by Loeffler. Bright, Addison, and other physicians were the discoverers of the diseases which bear their names. Gray wrote what was for many years the standard anatomy, and Kirk the standard physiology. A number of eminent names are now associated with the history of medical science. And by God, that is the end of the book. Thanks for watching.